I remember when I met Laura, she was way ahead of me. I mean, she was much more experienced than I was. I think the difference between Laura and me at that moment was that I had written more books, but the books I had written really weren't anything like the kind of work Laura was doing. I mean, she was talking to these guys. I was just starting out with one guy, because of Jennifer. So I remember our conversation. Laura was asking me a lot of questions about, how to publish a book, what it's like being a writer and things. So I was more of a writer than really an experienced investigator in serial homicide. Laura had all that experience. That was not her first trip into prison and interviewing people, but I was pretty wet behind the ears. So I remember we had an interesting conversation at that time.
I bet.
Yeah.
So Peter, can you tell us a little bit about the extractions that you did get and the other cases that you were able to solve by talking to Cottingham? Because I mean, that's a lot of cases that you were able to solve.
And it was
9 cases.
Yeah, like in what point did it? In what period of time did he start uncorking all that information?
He started uncorking seriously almost in one meeting. He spilled out something like 25.
Wow.
And we didn't know who the hell they were. That was my job. I was kind of like the intelligence analyst. Jennifer would get these things out of him. I would make sense of it. And so we closed 9 cases. We assisted Bergen County on 3, Kelly and Pryor. And the last one, oh my God, De La Sala. Which Rob Angelotti kind of announced on his TV show. In Nassau County, Long Island, I identified a victim that he described to me, and oh my God, when I tracked her down, I realized that Nassau County PD had another suspect in that case that about 5 years earlier, they cleared using DNA. They had the perpetrator DNA, for crying out loud. Okay? So I rang to them. I said, you guys, this is Cottingham. You guys got to run Cottingham's DNA. And amazingly, Cottingham's DNA was still not in CODIS accessible to New York. New Jersey had it. CODIS is not as easy as we think.
No, it's not.
You can't go fishing in CODIS, right? So this became the oldest cold case closed in American history. A murder from 1968, Diane Cusick, who, when they went back and checked the DNA that they had extracted, they exhumed her. And they managed to still extract the perpetrator DNA, and so it matched to Cottingham once they got a chance now to run it. All right, and so based on that, he was going to be charged and extradited, and of course, out of that deal came another 4 confessions, and 3 were on my list. The 4th one surprised me. It was one that that I kind of had on my list, but I didn't think it was him. And I had furnished Nassau County with the ones that I thought were like 80% for sure, not to muddy the waters up, right? And this one I didn't put on the list. They came back, and it was this one. So 5 cases, December 5th, 22. He pleads to 1. The other 4 are exceptional closures, including Diane Cusick he pled to. And a few months prior to that, Jennifer and I closed the case in Rockland County, New York, with the granddaughter of the victim as well assisting us.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
So this was Lorraine McGraw, which I found. In a way, that was my first case. And I found it in the sense that Cottingham's memory, you see, he never planned any of his murders. He's an impulse-driven serial killer. He doesn't fantasize. He doesn't dream. He doesn't keep clippings. And so because he didn't fantasize about doing these things, he doesn't remember when he actually was or where he was when he saw a victim that he would then, on opportunity, abduct and murder. And so very difficult, with this case. He had a vague memory. Yeah, I left a girl off 9W somewhere near Nyack. So newspapers.com is one of the most valuable investigative tools. I start looking.
I spend half my day on that thing.
9W that are going to match his signature, his profile. Right. Sure enough, I find Lorraine McGraw, March 1st, 1970. We reach out to her family. Through her family, she reaches back to us, the granddaughter, and so Jennifer and I kind of mobilize the granddaughter as well to write to Cottingham and give him a sense of he doesn't feel remorse, but he has cognitive remorse. He understands what remorse entails, but he admits he doesn't feel it. But he wants to. He wants to. And so he has this kind of intellectual appreciation of the gravity of his acts that he didn't have when he was a younger man. He tries to behave and do things that somebody with remorse would do, but he doesn't feel it. He just says, I don't feel it, but I know what the right thing to do is. And so that's how he connected with Jennifer. Yeah. That's how, and a lot of the confessions he kind of did for Jennifer. I killed your mom. Jennifer, of course, had ambitions to be on TV. She wanted to do a TV show doing what she was doing. And Cottingham, at one point, how this all started was Cottingham made a comment to me. He said, maybe I should confess to one to make Jennifer more famous on TV. All right. And I just jumped in like a parasite, like a tick, like a vampire on Cottingham. And I said, yeah, maybe you should confess to Ted. Then you'll really make Jennifer famous. And that got the wheels turning. And so then I went back to the cops and I said to the cops, listen, if you let a TV crew come in and film Cottingham with Jennifer around confession time, he's going to give you some confessions. Right. So some of the cops were just like aghast. We don't do TV. Right. Other cops, I remember one cop saying, I don't care if she's sitting on his lap, as long as the confessions are righteous, genuine confessions, we'll do it. So that's how it kind of began, as almost like to make Jennifer famous on TV, essentially. And the only problem was, the litmus test, of course, is with cops and their district attorneys. Is he going to tell us something that wasn't in the papers that we held back in the files? And of course, these murders going back to the 60s, nobody held anything back, right? Everything was in the papers. So it's a tough call. And so I had to kind of rebuild his memory and take him through those places, find out where exactly those murders were, and take him through those places without planting any additional memories in his head. He had to recall things on his own. And so there would be like little details, where the victims, he often used the victim's car. Where were the keys to the car when you were finished? So he would remember little things like that. And so cops were able to look at the files, the ones that survived, because a lot of files. One of the most frustrating things is the police come back to you and say there was a flood. It seems to me like every single police archive had a flood at some
Or
point
a
in its
fire.
history.
A fire, a flood. I've heard it all. And then
Yeah.
We lost it.
miraculously,
There was a fire.
it
The
appears.
mice ate it.
Laura, really quickly, I saw you nodding your head when he was talking about Cottingham's MO and the way that he knew that he had to show empathy even though he didn't feel it. Can you talk about that a little bit? What is that a symptom of? And that is pretty common amongst these serial killers.
Well,
Go ahead, Laura.
I'm gonna let Peter talk because I mean it's his serial killer. The feeling of the empathy, it's always the question of, is it real? Is it not? And it seems like you've already asked the question of, is he really feeling this? And he said no, but he wants to feel it.
Yeah, he's got no compunction, Cottingham, admitting that he doesn't feel anything. And I mean, he's an outlier as far as serial killers go, because there's nothing in his childhood history, at least that he's admitted to me, that is anything similar to other serial killers, other than one thing: a severe head injury when he was 4 years old. And that's what I think it is, because
Peter, was that
everything else about him, he's got this cohesive childhood. And unless he's hiding something, and I kind of joke about it with him because he was a choir boy in a Catholic church, and so the joke with me and between Cottingham and myself is Rich, you better tell me something, because I'm just going to write that you were raped as a choir boy in the church, right? Because you got to give me something. There's a blank page, and he's got nothing. He's got nothing. He's got nothing other than this one head injury that I documented that was serious enough to be reported in the newspapers. And we know, like from Keel's work on psychopathy, that probably what Cottingham has is trauma-induced psychopathy to the frontal lobe. He ran into a moving car, hit him in the frontal lobe. Right, same as NFL player injuries, right? Same as boxing injuries, that a lot of guys would take a shot to the head, right? And so his symptoms essentially mimic psychopathy. He's got a need for excitement. He live these secret lives. He's got no empathy, no remorse. None of it. He is just like a shark, driven by appetite. And that's why I call him a werewolf. Essentially, he's like Lon Chaney, and except every night was a full moon for this guy. But he didn't plan anything. He didn't set out, I'm going to get a girl. He didn't really trove for a particular victim. He trove for opportunities, and that's why I think he doesn't remember them. There's no newspaper clippings. The stuff that newspapers reported about him having souvenirs. That was evidence that he didn't. Recent evidence that he didn't have time to get rid of. Right. The big thing was, for example, one of the things that we found in his MO was all, and we didn't know whether this is MO or signature. A lot of the victims were missing their shoes. Like, where the hell are the shoes? Why are the victims without shoes? Right? Cottingham victims, and so the first thing that enters your head, this guy is a Jerry Brutus. He's got some kind of fixation with shoes, with their feet. What is it? Right? And of course, when they do the search warrant on this house, they don't find any collection of shoes. So what the hell? Right? So finally, when I got to him, very simple explanation. He would force the women to take their shoes off because he didn't want to get kicked by shoes. So right away, okay, this is MO now.
Practical.
But that's how I found some of the victims. I started I hit the newspapers and I started putting in keywords: shoes missing, a woman slain, shoes missing. And sure enough, 2 or 3 cases that were his came out from those keywords. They were missing their shoes.
Wow.
It's crazy.
Wow. Yeah.
Well, Laura, he
Yeah.
answered your frontal lobe question, so
Yeah.
that's well,
I mean, that could be. It could be that. It could be DNA.
And
exactly.
Peter, he was married with children during the crimes, correct?
Yes, yeah. He was married 10 years. He had 3 children. He had 3 mistresses at the same time in New York.
Wow.
That's a lot of work.
And one mistress knew about the other and knew about the wife. The other mistress knew about the wife, but not the other mistress. And then he had a third girl that he was running kind of as a hobby as a sex worker, who ran away from him. And she was found in 2004. For the longest time, everybody was convinced that he had killed her, but in fact, she hadn't. And she was 2004. They find her. She's still using the same pseudonym he had given her for scams. She and he were out stealing women's wallets in bars. And then they would take the credit card and use up the credit card up to a $500 amount, right? And so she was working with him these credit card scams, and police. Actually, Cottingham's wife, in the last 6 months, she really started suspecting him of stuff, and she had started divorce proceedings in the last year, which he kind of says that was the reason for his meltdown, because he got very sloppy at the end of his career, almost like Bundy. The way Bundy goes, lurching back and forth in Florida. He's no longer the same Ted Bundy. He's disintegrating. Cottingham disintegrating. Those torsos. He got arrested at random because he brought back a girl to the same hotel where he murdered another girl 10 days earlier. Right. And he rescued her. She ended up being a witness against him. So Cottingham was in a meltdown, but he would work the late shift from about 4 to midnight. His mistresses were nurses. So he would go for the first 2 hours, he'd see mistress 1. Then the next 2 hours, he'd see mistress 2. And he would always want to be home before dawn, so the neighbors don't see that he's away all night. And he wants to be there to have breakfast with his kids and see his kids off to school, and then he puts in a few hours of sleep.
Wow.
So
did you ever talk to his family members, his kids, his ex-wife?
I don't, partly because I kind of swore an oath with Cottingham that I wouldn't touch his family. His family's taboo, all right? And I know that the kids won't have anything to say. I mean, they're kids. What do they know? All right. What? So the wife, she slams the door when police come to see her. The police really want to talk to her, right? Because now they got questions for her. They found out so much about Cottingham since 1980 that she may enlighten them on, right? And she essentially shuts the door in his face. So she's still using his name. She's still under his name. She has divorced him, but and the divorce too, a lot of mythology about the divorce. Basically, she was divorcing him for mental cruelty, that you stopped having sex with her and he wasn't coming home anymore. But there's no accusations of physical abuse or anything like that. And oddly enough too, the mistresses as well, they defended him to the bitter end. They couldn't believe it that Richie, they're generous, sensitive, good-humored, nice guy was a serial killer or a killer was inconceivable to the two of them. And I went through their statements to the police. I read the interviews, and they're very hostile. They're really defending Cottingham, and of course, just watching him with Jennifer. Though he misses. I mean, he grieves. He's got feelings. I know he doesn't have remorse, but he certainly has grief, and he grieves for Jennifer.
Peter, did he connect that way with any of the other victims' family members, like he did with Jennifer? Did he connect with any of the other victims' family members the way he did with Jennifer?
Yes, I connected with a lot of family members of his.
I mean Cottingham. Did he connect with any of his other
yes, he
victims'
did.
family?
Yes, certainly.
Yeah.
Yes. Since Jennifer, yes, and definitely, I recruit some that are of frame of mind to do this. Not all family victims are ready to talk to a murderer, of their family members. Some are.
Right.
Most are, in fact.
Yeah.
And of course, the process of forgiveness is Jennifer forgave him, and a number of family members have formally forgiven them. So that encourages his confession in a way too, because when Jennifer forgave him, it was a moment for him. Because the last confession he had done was in 2010. And in fact, that was his first confession. The first 5 murders, when he was on trial between 1980 and 1984, he pled not guilty and I didn't do it. I was framed. Okay? So he never confessed until 2010, when he confesses to Nancy Vogel, October 1967. He murdered her in New Jersey. And so that comes now, 30 years after he's put away. So that was his first confession, and it went very badly. The judge just called him a monster. One of the son of Nancy Vogel, Bill Vogel, of course, made a victim impact statement, and he tore into Cottingham, and none of that was supposed to happen. You see, the Vogel confession, that took nearly 8 years to actually negotiate, and it was begun long before our Chief Angelotti got on it, and so it was supposed to be done quietly. The press was not supposed to be there. Somebody leaked it. It was on the court calendar, but they put it in August when nobody is there, right? But somebody leaked it. The press showed up. Now the judge has the press watching, so it wasn't going to be a discreet confession. And Cottingham, as he's getting humiliated and just berated in court, turns to Angelotti and says, I'm never doing this again. And so the next 3 confessions were in secret. You see, by the time I arrived in 2018 to talk with him, there were already 3 confessions done in secret that nobody knew except the families. And so Cottingham kind of hints to me that he's already made 3 more. We didn't say 3, that he's already made more confessions. And I eventually tap in through an attorney into the victim network and confirmed that he had, in fact, confessed to 3. And the victim family are getting upset because the earliest one was 2014, and they can't talk about it. And a lot of the victim family members are complaining to me. They're saying, we feel like we're almost complicit in the murder because we can't talk about it. Why can't we talk about that the murder has been solved, right?
Mhm.
And there was this town in Bergen County, Midland Park, where he murdered a girl coming home from band practice at school, and it was assumed that her classmates, some boys, had attempted to gang rape her, and that she was killed in that attempt. And the witnesses saw her talking about 10 minutes, 20 minutes before her murder, talking with these boys. And so now they're in their 60s and 70s, because the murder was in 1968. And people in this town are still pointing at these old guys and saying they're the guys who tried to rape Jackie Harp and killed her, right? And they don't know that the case was closed, that it was a serial killer. In fact, when those boys were talking to Jackie Harp, they were talking to her in front of a root beer place, Stewart's Root Beer. He was inside. He stopped to get a root beer, and he saw her talking to the boys, and he followed her in his car and killed her.
Oh my
Right?
God.
He didn't even know he was in Midland Park. He had no
Wow.
idea. I had no idea where I was. Right?
So he just did it like spontaneous. It was just like,
Yes, exactly.
that's terrifying.
Exactly.
Okay, that's terrifying right there.
Exactly. Like a
Why?
werewolf.
Right.
Yeah, like an animal.
Like an animal. Like that
Like
that
an animal.
reptilian gene that you were talking about in your book.
Yeah.
It's that
And the
reptilian
moment,
gene that
the kind of killer instinct that's miswired.
And how old was that little girl?
That head on the hit, that hit on the head, is what threw the wires off. So within 15 minutes, she was dead.
Wow.
How old was she?
She was 13.
Oh.
And now, she looked older. She looked much older. He thought he was killing like a 16, 17-year-old girl, but
That's horrible.
he pounced on her, and she fought back. There were too many houses around there, and so she had a that's the other thing is because she was in a marching band, she was the flag carrier. So she had this leather strap where she would carry the flag, and she was very proud that she was like the bearer of stars and stripes in the marching band. So when she was walking home, she was carrying the flag carrier, and one of the boys took the flag carrier and was playing around with it. That's what she was strangled with. So those boys were suspects for all those years. The case was closed, like 2017, but they don't know it. And so I had another case like that, where Jennifer and I arranged for a victim's sister, because she could not believe that Bergen County told her that Cottingham had confessed to the murder of her sister. She didn't believe Bergen County. And so she wanted to hear this from Cottingham. And so Jennifer and I arranged for her to correspond with Cottingham. She did. Cottingham persuaded her that he was with her sister that night. And just from talking with her before and after, I could feel the sense of relief she had to realize that indeed she's not being bullshitted by the police, by Bergen County, because her murder was in 1969. And so she's been fighting Bergen County, generations of prosecutors and police officers at Bergen County. She herself went to work with the Colorado Police Department, and she for 40 years she was nagging Bergen County. They have a whole box of her faxes and letters and emails. And so when they closed the case and then told her you can't talk about it to anybody, she was going nuts. So we arranged for her to talk directly to Cottingham, and she was so relieved that Cottingham persuaded her that indeed he had killed her sister. And again, Cottingham is still a practicing Catholic, and so she gave him benediction and forgiveness as well, very formal forgiveness. And
Wow.
talking to her afterwards, I could sense just this lightness in her. And then she dies.
Oh,
Yeah, but you know, when she died within like 4 or 5 months of that, I
wow.
go, my God, you know, another 4 or 5, if I waited another 4 or 5 months, she would have died in that
No.
state she was before. And
Oh.
so that made me make that public announcement in Midland Park that I made, right? Because now I heard from, you know, I put posts up on Facebook and so forth, and there's a minister who hosts Jackie's friends in the marching band, the Imperial Knights. These old ladies, it's an all-girl marching band, so these old ladies still get together once a year and update each other. Is there any news on Jackie's murder?
Wow.
So he says, why did you come and talk to them? They're going to be meeting end of December, just before New Year's Eve. They're going to be meeting in the church basement. Why don't you come? So I came down and I broke the story essentially. And I talked to Rob about it. I talked to Bergen County that I was going to do this, and they agreed on what I'll say, what I won't say. We went over the text, over what I was going to do. So I had their cooperation. The press was not invited, but they were prepared that eventually the press is going to find out. So I knew, you know, that I can safely tell any press inquiries you can call Bergen County, and they essentially were agreed that Bergen County will confirm the name of the victim, date of death, cause of death, and who the perpetrator is, Richard Cottingham, and they won't say anything more. And that's how it happened. So
Wow. Well,
I was a
I
little
think that's
shocked when I saw Rob's documentary, you know, the Torso Killer Confessions, and he describes this episode, that the meeting in he says it was in a public library, but it wasn't. It was in a church, right? And he makes it sound like, oh my God, I woke up and there was Peter Vronsky on TV announcing it. For crying out loud! We start 6 months ago. I had the text approved because it was going to go into the second edition of Serial Killers already. I was going to make the announcement public, but that's the reason I couldn't look at these old men who all their lives are having fingers pointed at them. You know, you killed Jackie Harp, and they're dying too. You
Yeah.
know, a lot
Is
of
that what got you in trouble with?
families have passed away. These are 50-year-old cases, 68, 69, and they could have been solved. The Vogel case. I mean, the Vogel case could have been solved in 1998. Governor Chris Whitten shut the deal down. There was a deal made already for the confession. Rob was still in short pants. Alan Grieco made the deal, who was one of the original investigators. But the governor at that moment, she had problems with looking too soft on crime. And so when she saw what Cottingham wanted, which was food, essentially, you know, he'll confess for food. You know, bring me some decent food and I'll talk to you. All right. So the deal was made, and he would have confessed to Nancy Vogel in 98. And Nancy Vogel's mom was still alive. She would have known what happened.
Well, that's the thing. That's why this work that you're doing and Laura's doing is so important, because these victims' families wait 50 years, 60 years. They're still waiting for answers. They don't give up. That's what people don't understand. When you lose a loved one in a murder where you don't know any of the answers, you don't know who killed them, you're going to keep fighting to find out what happened to them. I mean, you don't just give up. So what you guys are doing is so important. The work that you both are doing, it's amazing work. I'm glad that you both met each other. And I'm glad, Peter, that you were able to talk to us today, because it's another insight into the work that Laura does, you know, from some totally random. The universe just pulled you into this case and made you do this. Like totally random.
Let me plug one thing.
Yes.
I'm now working with the National Institute for Law and Justice. Okay, it's a nonprofit charity, NLIJ.org. founded by ex-NYPD police officers and people who feel that they family member is not getting a proper investigation. They can petition us and we'll undertake the investigation essentially for free. The investigation will be done. They're all ex-cops. They're all licensed private investigators. And to get someone to review your, you lost a son, you lost a daughter, to get a private investigator, just the opening review is $30,000.
Yeah.
So the NLIJ will sponsor this for free. We'll do the investigation if we think that we can be of help. So NLIJ.org, you'll find us there. And if anybody out there listening to this, they got a murdered family member, police are not returning their calls, talk to NLIJ.
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
That's great.
We've been talking about why there isn't an organization. We know Cheryl Mack McCollum. She has a cold case foundation that she does, but I think there needs to be more. It needs to be more because there's so many cold cases out there, and like what you and Laura are doing. Laura's got. We have so many. We've put together teams before of retired FBI agents, forensic teams to go look for victims' remains. There's so much work to be done. And the regular law enforcement, they don't have the bandwidth. They're kind of limited by what they can do because of law. And they're, because they want to look at something and do something where they're going to be able to close a case. So their parameters are so much smaller. But, some organizations like the one you're involved with, they can go where the cops can't go.
That's right. That's right. Bandwidth, I think that's a good way to describe it. Because the cops on the front line want to do this.
Yeah.
But they're the mountain of bureaucracy above them is just they're in straitjackets.
Yeah.
And that bureaucracy is untouchable. You can't communicate with that bureaucracy. They have their own language. They're locked doors. That bureaucracy is as locked to us as it is to the cold case detectives. And it's frustrating for everybody to see that. A lot of victims don't realize that. It's not the cop, actually. It's the cop's bosses.
Exactly.
It's the bureaucracy.
Down.
And it's the prosecutor's office.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
They're the ones that pulling the strings.
You don't get the DA on board. You got to get the DA on. That's what I learned.
Yeah.
I learned that very gradually. This was
we have to. Yeah.
I'm sure, Laura, for you too, right?
Oh yeah.
You begin to learn like you get all these cops on your side finally. 18 months, you finally get through to the cops, and then you realize that now you got another 18 months to get through to the district attorney, because the cop can't even get the district attorney to return the call to them.
Right.
So,
yeah.
All right, Peter, we're going to stop right now, but don't hang up because we have to upload it. This has been amazing. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, I think we're going to be talking to you again.
Yeah.
We got a lot of things that we can talk to you about because we have some other stuff.
I'm going to just end
you
this.
guys did an hour 22, so.